Hello, a little video of how Dungeon Quest changed and lost its player base from over 30,200 players to about 2,000 active players and the little things that led to its downfall. Dungeon Quest made by the sole developer Vinny Caffe. As the solo developer, he introduced the game with the Desert Temple and the Winter Outpost. With the unique genre, it took off and started as a top Roblox game at its peak time, with active updates and Dungeon from Pirate Island to Underworld with quick updates within few months, introducing new content which brought along famous YouTubers to play and publicize it. Finally, with the waves having reached its peak base, with big Roblox YouTubers like Tanger and Kelvings and others. Afterwards, following Samurai Palace till Ghastly Harbor having introduced better cosmetic and better model design and improved map and dungeon visuals. So what went wrong after Steampunk? The repetitive nature lead to a decrease in player base. But the final coffin which changed everything in Dungeon Quest never truly recovered were the introduction of the boss raids, with limited player entry to 10 players and reduced drop rates, along with long delay in between Tier 7 till Tier 20 which took almost over 6 to 8 months. Looking at the loss of interest of player base, Vinny tried to introduce multiple bosses with different mechanisms, but something had changed. With 6 new bosses like the Goliath with unique patterns and loot drops, but being too repetitive and low chance of loot drop. New bosses like the Gladiator and other later on after months of waiting, like the Dragon with new egg ability, Golden Golem and Earth Golem, and Green Guardian with new mechanism and new loot depending on the tier, with 20 being the best. Followed by new maps like Orbital Outpost, which took over 7 months long to make, didn't help the player base and saw a steep fall in original players. Although Volcanic Chambers was a relief with better mechanisms and bosses, better visuals and music, but it was not going to fix the overall situation. New updates, new dungeons dropping, each one taking over 7 to 8 months, with players grinding, getting good stuff, and leaving to come back when new dungeon drops. This further reduced some players, most never came back. Finally, on 7 June 2023, Vinny Caffe decided to sell the game to the developers Team Vordex. Existing players were pessimistic about the change of ownership and possible new changes, including to be discussed later about introduction of pay to win. Vordex team launched new dungeon R.i.p with good mechanics and 4 bosses, good-looking cosmetic. So players started to be optimistic. But this followed by events which were the final coffins, with the introduction of pay to win with a new Easter event and the reintroduction of boss raids which were limited to only 3 tries, a day which could be renewed using Robux, along with new Greg mini boss which lead to introduction to mythic crafting. Later on, another dungeon dropped, the Abyssal Void, which is the last dungeon nearly half a year later, which will be the last dungeon and dungeon marking an end to the game. There were UI changes in the game, including inventory cosmetic and introduction of new currency platinum and boost, which brought a couple of new players, but most of the old player base had dropped the game. Finally, with the Dungeon Plus Pass, the game lost its charm, and on 4 February 2025, Vordex decided Dungeon Quest wasn't worth the trouble and officially dropped it. Well, that marks the end of years of grinding with friends new and old. Dungeon Quest.